Good evening and welcome to the Business Support and Digital Overview and Scrutiny Committee's meeting. Apologies for absence. Steve.
Just to say that Councillor Clark is at another meeting and is en route. We also have apologies from Councillor Cook, and Councillor Howcross-Scott is substituting.
Thank you, Steve. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 28th of November as correct? I have no urgent matters. Disclosable pecuniary interest or other significant interests in whipping. Are there any declarations of DPR or other interests or any declarations of whipping? Okay. None. Well, we're going to do a slight alteration to the agenda, members. We're going to bring item 9 forward, which is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman decision on page 159 to page 158. I will ask Dave Harris, our Chief Planning Officer, to introduce the report. Dave.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to this decision, it related to a planning enforcement case where the Ombudsman found some fault in a delay in us taking action in relation to that, and also concern regarding access to some of our enforcement records. As a result of that, the Ombudsman came up with a number of recommendations. One was for us to apologise to the person concerned, to respond on the adequate resources aspect, and then to respond in relation to how we could better keep our records in the future, particularly if something like RAC happens again and we have to vacate the building. I have written to the person concerned and genuinely apologised for the delay. In relation to resources, there is two things there. I don't think the Ombudsman appreciates that resources within local councils are quite stretched, and it's not so easy as to just say, oh, well, I would like another couple of members of staff for my team. I think every team in the council would like a couple of members of extra staff. However, having said that, at the time of this enforcement complaint, out of 3 positions, I only had 1 officer in post. The other 2 were vacant. And it takes time to recruit appropriate people to those. That recruitment has now taken place, and I've got a full complement of staff. The second thing is that we're working on digital planning alongside Paul's team. And as a result of that, we've brought in something called Reporter Breach, which members will have some training on. That has been really beneficial because what it means is that we've been able to reduce the amount of invalid applications by something around about 50%, which means that my enforcement officers are spending more time investigating real breaches rather than ones which are not a breach of planning control. Then finally, in terms of adequate records, what happened was 2 things at that time. Firstly, the officer who dealt with the case originally did paper records, but for some reason did not place them on file. They were in the office, and we also did not place them on an electronic file. We then had RAC come along. We struggled to get into the office to find the records. Although I could go into the office supervised, I couldn't just spend a long time in the office searching around in cupboards trying to find something that officer might have left somewhere because it wasn't actually on the file. Staff have been reminded to make sure that they do take site notes and that they are put on the electronic file so that if anything like RAC happens again, we have access to that. So, Chair, we have addressed, in my view, all the recommendations set out by the Ombudsman. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any member? Councillor Jones.
Yeah, through you, Chair, I'd like to thank the Chief Planning Officer for the report. In hindsight, it doesn't seem that much more could have been done than was being done. But of course, we've always got to sort of take it on the chin if the Ombudsman finds fault with the council, and I'm pleased that an apology was sent to the resident. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Dave, for the report. Just to be clear, how long a delay was it? That I think I've read somewhere it was 18 months or something like that, but I'm not quite sure.
Chair, thank you. There was a delay, and if I can explain the reason for the delay, Councillor Hackwell, the original case officer was one of my planning officers. It was what we considered to be a low priority case in accordance with the council's enforcement policy. He did his investigations. He then left the authority. We then passed it to an enforcement officer who then went on sick leave. And I then couldn't then pass to my senior enforcement officer because she was the only enforcement officer left because she was involved in some very high priority cases, and this was a low priority one. It did mean that there was a delay in taking it forward to formal action of around about 18 months to two years. I did explain to the complainant that what I was trying to do was to negotiate a solution to it, because if we went down the line of a formal enforcement notice, that was likely to be appealed, and with the planning inspectorate at the moment, they're taking about 2 years to deal with enforcement appeals. In the end, sadly, I couldn't resolve it through negotiation, and we did have to serve a notice. So, long-winded answer, Councillor Hackwell, about 18 months, 2 years delay. Thank you.
Quick follow-up. What is your expected reaction time normally? If someone makes a complaint, how would you sort of, how long will it take you normally? I mean, we have targets for everything in this council. So what is your target to get resolved the formal complaint normally?
That's a really difficult question to answer, Councillor Hackwell. In terms of the high priority cases, someone cutting down a protected tree, doing works to a listed building, those high priority cases, we will get out immediately to those. With the more lower priority ones, we try to do a site inspection within 3 weeks, 21 working days. But then in terms of resolution, it depends on the character involved. Some people say, oh, I'm really, really sorry, I didn't realise I was doing something wrong, I'll put it right straight away. Other people are a little bit more obstructive, and therefore it takes time to complete those investigations. For a site visit, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg, and thank you for your response, Dave. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dave. Looking at this just as a layperson on the outside, when something happens and you try to negotiate it, that's one process. Going to formal is a second process. Is there any way that we can actually break this officially into two? Because obviously the Ombudsman thought the whole thing started on day one. So what I'm trying to say is, I think what you outlined is actually two different processes. It's like if you go to somebody and sort of say, well, I'm thinking about doing X and Y, can you come some of the road with me? And the other is, well, you didn't, and now I have to go official. Is there a way, or is there something we could do to look at how we can avoid this happening in the future? Sorry.
You don't need to apologise, Councillor Brown. That's a really good question. I did find this case a little bit unusual. We have had enforcement complaints go to the Ombudsman before. I've never had this result. We did spend some time trying to explain to the Ombudsman that process that you've just outlined, that we try to negotiate what the government guidance is, that formal enforcement notices is the last resort. You don't immediately go to that, and therefore negotiation takes time. I think in this case, the Ombudsman probably reached a decision he did because we didn't have those file notes to demonstrate the work that we had done on it. And I think that's why he made this decision. I think if he'd had those file notes, which showed the work that we had done in terms of negotiation, he possibly wouldn't have come to the conclusion that he did.
Thank you. Would you like to come back, Councillor Brown?
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. And I think your officers will be aware that if we don't record everything on the central systems, we are at risk. And I suspect the message, it'll be helpful to Paul going forward, and I would hope that word is spread that we need to make sure if we put a system in that we all can access it. I don't mean physically that we can all access it, but that it is accessible when needed.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any member? Thank you, Dave. We've got no other member. Vice Chair.
I move the recommendation at page. I move the recommendation at page 151. Committee note the outcome of the reviews into planning. Is it not? Oh, I'm on now. Third attempt. I move the recommendation at page 151. The committee note the outcome of the reviews into planning enforcement resource, Appendix A, and access of information during the partial building closure due to RAC, Appendix B, in response to the Ombudsman's recommendation.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is that seconded? Councillor Hawksworth, is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 5, the attendance of the portfolio holder for business management. I'll ask the portfolio holder, Councillor Van Dyke, if she has any comments prior to questions. Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, I'd really like to take this opportunity to commend the work of the staff that run the services within my portfolio, and in particular to say that how pleased I am that we've agreed to make a 5% pay increase to our very hard-working staff.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dyke. Councillor Hamilton, Vice Chair.
Thank you. So I'll kick off some questions. So it's great to see that the council is showing such wonderful commitment to our staff who really are the engine of all the work that's done here at the council by the proposed 5% pay increase. How do you think this will help improve morale and make Medway Council an employer of choice in the area?
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
I think it absolutely will. We know we've fallen behind some of the other local authorities in the region with pay, and the 5% pay increase will clearly resolve to some extent the position we were in, where we were having to recruit locums because we couldn't recruit substantive staff to the organisation, and hopefully this will address that issue now.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dijk. I have Councillor Harker-Scott and then Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Van Dijk, as you know, I chair Children's Committee, and I'd like to say what a difference it makes having less agency staff, a revolving door of people. Would you say that paying people right and investing in them is better than continually recruiting and retaining, using HR to try and recruit staff and have that revolving door where London's on our doorstep? As you know, I worked in Greenwich, you get London waiting and other perks.
Absolutely, it will help. We know that other local authorities in close proximity to us have a better offer, have had a better offer in terms of pay. And we, as a consequence of not being able to recruit staff going backwards, we were having to pay locums to provide services at huge cost, and with perhaps less consistency of delivery of those services.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harker-Scott, and thank you, Councillor Van Dijk. Councillor Printer.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to talk about retention, really, and the pay rise. I know some people are getting excited by 5%. RPI February 2023 was 13.8%. It was up at 8% in 2022. So 5%, which they didn't get anywhere near during them pay rises, isn't as exciting as some people are getting. However, we are competing not just with other authorities, but also with the private sector as well, which has been above inflation. And how has that helped with retention? I noticed today there was an advert from KCC, quite an aggressive recruitment advert from KCC, come and join KCC. So has that stopped that flow of people leaving Medway to go to other authorities? And have you seen that really come through in our employment figures? Thank you.
Well, the 5% has only just been agreed, so I think that we'd be in a difficult position to assess the effect of that at this point. But it clearly is taking us forwards towards some sort of equity with other local authorities in the region.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dijk. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Van Dijk, yeah, it's all very well having a 5% pay rise, but how much is it going to cost us in real terms annually? I hear the figure of £10 million. Is that pretty well accurate?
I may have to ask one of the officers for the figures on that.
Information, though, that question was asked at this last meeting. It's in the minutes. There's a reply that comes from the Chief Finance Officer, and maybe she's the person who can actually recount what happened last time. Yeah. I don't know why we're having the same questions when we have the answers written in front of us in the papers.
I wanted to know whether this portfolio holder knows how much it costs. Thank you very much. Well, then she can tell me.
Councillor Van Dijk.
Okay, well, the figures are set. The figures are set out in the council papers that I have in front of me, and I assume you also have. The total for gross pay, the grand total, is 100,596,567. No, it's 100,596,567. It's at the bottom of the paper. That's the grand total for payroll spend.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dijk. Councillor Kim, would you like to put your microphone on?
Yes. Yeah, my supplementary question is, where's this money coming from? What are we cutting in order to pay for this?
I think that the proper answer to that question is the fact that if we're unable to recruit staff because we don't pay them the same rate as other organisations, then we end up having to recruit locums, and that's something we were doing not too long ago at huge cost to the authority.
I've heard that, okay, but so you're telling me that it's not been funded by cutting elsewhere, so therefore we must be borrowing for this. We are borrowing £10 million to pay for this pay rise. Is that right?
Can I ask one of the officers to answer that question, please?
Thank you. Katie, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so... Hello. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the draft budget papers elsewhere on the agenda tonight actually set that figure out. So the 5% on pay equates to, off the top of my head, 5.6 or 5.8 million. Yeah.
Thank you, Katie.
So we're borrowing 5.8 million to pay for this, to fund the pay rise.
Through you, Chair, that's possibly a question that you might want to raise under the budget item, because I think there's a broader context than in the context of holding this portfolio holder to account. Happy to answer that when we get to that item.
I want to make sure the portfolio holder knows of this, because what my next question is, although paying for locums is exorbitantly expensive,
So we've got a point of order, Barry. You got a point of order?
Yeah, just on that, it was on the EMC papers last night.
Do you want to pause?
Okay, we'll take a pause for 5 minutes, some technical glitch. Thank you. Sorry about that. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. Okay.
Sorry, Chair, didn't I have a point of order before we got cut off?
Yes, I told you you stated your point of order.
Oh, as long as it was heard, because I didn't know if the mic went off, but did you hear it?
Yeah, we heard 5.4.
Oh, a lot of didn't hear it, but just for information, because it was in the EMC papers last night, the pay increase equates to 5.4 million. It's based on current staff currently employed at Medway Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. A point of order?
It is, in fact, if you don't mind. I just want to let everybody know that I have a hearing impairment and I'm blind in one eye, so I would appreciate if people did use the microphone. And I hope Councillor Kemp was in the same meeting as I was, because when David Harris was here, he laboured the fact that that item on the agenda was the fault of locums, the fault of not recruiting staff, and the fault of stuff outside his, outside his hands. And then we get a question like it's Groundhog Day from Councillor Kemp. I know I'm only subbing, but, I have got an IQ of over 134. Thank you.
Well, congratulations on that, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Right. I'm asking the portfolio holder. Okay, you say the 5% pay rise will only recently be agreed. I thought it was agreed last year as well. But my...
Point of order. Please use the microphone.
Chair, we keep on people interrupting all the time.
I can't hear you, Barry.
Okay, can you hear me now? Thank you. Good. Okay, first, a couple of things. I thought the 5% pay rise was also increased, awarded last year, and again it's going to be going ahead this year. My question is, if we are borrowing money to pay for this pay rise, we must be paying interest on that on that loan, and that would more or less.
Can I have a point of order? We're not, so that we can have clarification around that. That's actually a question that needs to come under the next agenda item.
Can we hear the question, and then I would determine whether it should be answered by the portfolio holder or not. Councillor Kemp.
Okay. Well, okay, my next question is then, is there any increase in productivity likely to be achieved from this, and how is this going to be measured? Because I know the government are very fond of awarding unfunded pay increases to the tune of 10, 15 billion pounds or whatever it is. I'll take the council to go down that route as well. Perhaps you could answer that.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Do we have a point of order, Councillor Bowen? No, I had a comment. Councillor, I'll come back to you. Councillor Van Dijk, would you like to respond?
Okay. Well, I'm not aware of any evidence that the staff who we employ are not working to full capacity. That's my first point. Because your question implies that that's the case. I think it comes down to the fact that we have an obligation to provide services to the people of Medway, and in order to do that, we need to be able to recruit staff to provide those services.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dijk. Councillor Kim, would you like to come back?
Yes, I would, please. Yes, you're absolutely right, Councillor. We have an obligation to the residents of Medway. They also have an obligation to the members. Now, some departments are excellent. You ring up and you get an answer almost straight away, or if they don't know, they tell you when. But often when people are working from home, you telephone them and it goes to answer the phone. So you send them an email, and they respond to you at a time. If they don't know, they've got to then email somebody else, and so on. So when in the past, when we could have got
point of order, Chair.
When we could have got an answer in.
Councillor Kim, we've got a point of order. Councillor MacDonald.
Chair, I have some concern here as a point of order about us starting to say that certain members of staff are not doing a job and others, unless you've got evidence, Councillor Kemp.
Yes, I have.
I have some concern about us bringing this up at a meeting when we're starting to criticise some departments above others. I think we should steer away from that and keep to the questioning.
Okay, do you want me to actually name and shame then?
No, we do not want you to name and
Through the
shame.
chair, please.
That's not proper.
Through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Through the chair. Councillor Kemp, can we have your response? Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, for your point of order.
I hesitate to name departments. I don't really wish to do it in open court, as it were. But if you want to speak to me privately afterwards, I can give you the names.
Sorry, Councillor Kemp, your question is to Councillor Van Dijk.
Oh dear.
Chair, point of order, please. I know we haven't got no legal representation here, but if this is about questioning the portfolio holder about a report on all the good work she's done over this last year, okay? If Councillor Kemp wants to start, and I've got people out here that are more union-minded than me, but if Councillor Kemp wants to, surely from a legal point of view, and Steve, you may be able to pop in, if Councillor Kemp is going to start naming departments and staff, then let the unions take him on. Because I don't feel that this is the right audience. And Sam, you're at the end there, obviously from HR, sorry to bring you in, but I don't think we should be pulling apart staff when we're holding the portfolio holder to account with regards to the things that she's achieved this year. Sorry, I do think we're treading into some legal grounds that we shouldn't be going into here.
Chair,
thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Chair, I had no intention of mentioning names or even departments.
Thank you.
No, I didn't. I just said I did not.
Thank you.
You're the one who brought up. I had no intention of naming names. I'm just saying that some departments take an awful long time to respond, whereas others respond very quickly. And if you wanted me to tell you there, I would say I would speak to you privately afterwards. Is that wrong? Do you object to that?
Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Kemp.
Thank you.
Point of order from Councillor Hockrell-Scott.
Obviously, you know, I've already asked Councillor Kemp to talk into the mic, and he has, and I appreciate that. But I also want to give him a word of warning here. I'm the Equalities Officer for the National Education Union. If he started naming and shaming anyone in my union, I would take that as a grievance and discrimination. This is not Chatham House rules. We're not in the Houses of Commons. This is televised, and actually it's an insult to our hard-working, committed members of staff that deliver day in and day out to our constituents in Medway. And actually in Strood, even worked on Christmas Day and Boxing Day at the Leisure Centre. I'm absolutely, quite frankly, appalled with Councillor Kemp this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Hockrell-Scott.
Perhaps it would be advisable. Okay. Perhaps it would be advisable if Councillor Howcroft-Scott listened to my reply to Councillor MacDonald. I had no intention of mentioning names at all. It was not my intention. I'm just saying, I've repeated.
Point of order.
Oh gosh, Sam.
You said you would say names and give names. I heard it, Councillor MacDonald heard it, and probably anyone watching this heard that as well.
If you heard what, to you, Chair, if Councillor Howcroft-Scott listened to what I'd said, I said I had no intention of mentioning names, but when Councillor MacDonald suggested that I thought he did, I said I would give them to him privately afterwards.
Thank you,
I can't see why Councillor Howcroft-Scott is getting so hot under the collar. Perhaps she ought to calm down a bit and wind her neck in.
Thank you. Councillor Van Dijk, would you like to respond?
I would like to respond, and I think it's completely inappropriate to make vague allegations against staff. I don't know who those staff are, and in terms of their ability to respond in a particular time. It depends on the issue, it depends on who they have to go to get that information, how they have to collate that information. Just because the question is asked doesn't mean at a flick of a switch they can give you a response. I think that's unacceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dijk.
Point of order. I'd like an apology from Councillor Kemp. I do not have to wind my neck in. My neck actually works. Not many bits of my body work, but my neck works. I'm not here to have public and personal insults about my abilities or disabilities. Thank you very much.
Nobody was talking about your abilities or disabilities. Thank you.
Am I going to get an apology, Chair?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I'll take that up with Councillor Conduct.
Councillor Printer.
I'm sorry, Chair, but you've heard a member, whoever that member is, heard a member make a throwaway comment aimed at another member. You as Chair should be dealing with that, Chair. That's not good enough. That is not respectful. I have respect for everyone in this room, believe it or not, and that is not respectful for anyone in this, and it's not getting... The portfolio holder has come here to answer questions, and throwaway comments of that nature wouldn't be in the boardroom that I was in today, wouldn't be accepted, so it shouldn't be accepted in here tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Printer. Councillor Kemp, would you like to respond?
Nothing to respond.
Chair.
Challenge was to yourself, Chair, not actually Councillor Kemp. It was to you, Chair, as a Chair.
As a Chair, I didn't pick up a throwaway question. I picked up the answer, the debate coming through from the floor and the point of order. What was the throwaway comment?
Wind your neck in, Chair, which isn't appropriate, and you as Chair should be dealing with it.
Councillor Kemp, would you like to withdraw that comment?
I withdraw that comment, and I apologise if asking you to wind your neck in has upset you, then I do apologise.
Thank you. Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, it's a bit too loud. Back to the normal business. I'd start with CABS calls. Last year, when we were holding to account, we noted the fact that CABS calls had fallen from around 30,000 calls a month to around 25,000 calls a month. We look at in this year's report, and it's fallen further to 21,000 calls a month. What has been the driver in the last 12 months to reduce that by 25% or 20%? That's the first question. I have several questions. Would you like me to wait for the answer and ask the next one, or ask them all?
Sorry. Yeah. Do you want to ask another question as well, and then I'll...
Okay.
Answer
Secondly, community interpreting services. With many smartphones now able to translate in real time, even on a phone call, do you foresee a reduction in this service in the near future? And if so, what are the plans for reducing this service? I'll go on to blue badges. Out of 624 applications, how many were rejected? So we can see whether it's a useful process to go through and look at them all or not. And this one, with targets of 12 weeks to issue a blue badge, do you think when requesting the return of a blue badge, the request is sent to grieving families as soon as possible after a week or so, when in most cases the funeral hasn't even taken place? It's a very upsetting way to deal with people that are grieving. Please can you review this process and let the committee know what you're going to change to the working practices in future. That's my questions. Oh, and then finally in HR, you mentioned you mentioned in the report children's adults of December 24 is 19% for temporary staff. What's that in an absolute number?
Sorry, Councillor Hackwell, could you say that again?
Yeah, in HR, you mentioned in the report that children and adults as of December 24 is 19% for temporary staff. What's that in an absolute number? And in your last report, you mentioned that as of the 31st of December 23, there were 106 temps in children's, 53 in adults, and 74 across the wider organisation, so 223 in total. What are the number of people on temporary contracts now? And my final question is what percentage of people have been reviewed by Medpay have received pay increases?
I didn't catch that one, sorry.
Sorry. What percentage of people that have been reviewed in Medpay have received pay increases.
Thank you, Councillor Hackwell. Councillor Van Dijk, would you like to respond?
Okay, I can answer some of these questions, but not all of them. So why have the cabs calls fallen? Yes, I understand that they have. That's the information I have, that there are less calls. But I'm not really sure how we can explain the falls, because we haven't communicated with the people who are no longer making them. Community.
But surely you know which departments are not receiving calls now, so there's been a reduction in, I don't know, council tax inquiries or whatever it is.
Well, surely call numbers will fluctuate over time, won't they? They won't be exactly the same all of the time. I don't have enough information in front of me to explain why that is. Whether the various departments will have an understanding of things that have occurred that have given rise to that, I don't know. But I don't think that's a question I can answer. Do you want me to go?
Just to clarify, we asked the same question last year when there was a reduction, and we ended up with a briefing paper explaining why those calls had fallen. So I'm asking the same question and expect to get the same answers as we had in the briefing paper. It's not an unreasonable question to ask.
Chair, can you ask if we are going to have a briefing paper? There are several operational questions here that probably needs to... Officers here may be able to answer or may not be able to answer, but the level of detail that we needed to make an understanding, I think the briefing paper, and Councillor Hackwell is quite correct, a briefing paper is the right solution for some that are very detailed. But there are officers who may be able to enlighten Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Hackwell, do you require a briefing paper?
I would prefer the answer from the portfolio holder tonight.
Councillor Van Dijk.
I don't have the information to answer that question.
Is there any officer? Phil, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so we can provide a breakdown of the call volumes and the services, and that will demonstrate where the reductions are coming from year on year. So we'll prepare that for the committee.
Thank you. Are you content with that, Councillor Hackwell?
I wouldn't say content was a word I'd use, but it's acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Van Dijk.
So are we moving on to the next question now?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. So community interpretation services. In fact, there has been a reduction in some types of cases, but also there is now an improved offer for deaf customers, which has expanded part of that service. And that has been very successful, and it's done very well in stages 1 and 2, with significant complements in community interpretation services, particularly in Ukrainian.
But the question was that with the technology that's available these days, even smartphones can translate in real time. Do you expect that service to increase or decrease, and what are your plans to deal with that?
I think more interrogation needs to be undertaken to work that out, because it depends on the people that you're communicating with in terms of how that service is provided. And a number of people won't be able to use services such as AI.
Councillor Van Dijk, sorry, we've got a point of order from Councillor MacDonald. Point of order?
Point of information, really,
point of clarification.
The council have a duty to provide that service anyway. So you can talk about mobile phones and everything else, but the council have a legal obligation to provide the service within the council. They have a legal obligation. So I don't know why we're going around and around, because it is something that is used, but it's just that information. As you know, Councillor Hackwell, they have a legal obligation to provide that service, not a mobile phone or tell people to get on their phones. They have a legal obligation to provide the service.
If I repeat my question, Councillor MacDonald, I said that technology now exists, that is available on mobile phones, and it's a more commonplace technology these days. Do you think that, I was asking Councillor Van Dijk's opinion, whether this service would be reducing, and what are the plans to reduce that service because it's being taken over by AI, effectively? I didn't say, it won't disappear. But if it's one person a year, we're still providing.
Thank you, Councillor Hackwell.
Just for those who are not familiar with services, interpretation is an entirely different service from translation. And let's just not mix it up.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton, for your point. Councillor Van Dijk.
Okay, I think we're on to blue badges now. Is that right? Is that the next one on your list, Councillor Hackwell?
It is.
I wonder if you could ask me that question again, if you wouldn't mind.
There were two questions. One was, out of the 624 applications, how many were rejected? So we can actually get a feel for whether actually going through 6,000 applications is worth it or not. If there's one or two are rejected, you might as well just pass them all.
Okay, I will have to ask one of the officers to respond to that.
Paul, would you like to respond?
Yes, I can confirm that most, I don't know the exact figures, but most blue badge applications are approved, having gone through the appropriate process with the occupational therapists and the tests. So the vast majority are, and we can get those figures and pass them on with the briefing notes. But I know anecdotally the vast majority are, but the checks are in place. It would be a decision for the council whether we widen that over.
Thank you, Paul. Are you content with that, Councillor Hackwell?
I look forward to the briefing note. But there is a second part to the blue badge question as well.
Councillor Van Dijk.
Sorry, the second part of the question, of that question being?
With 12 weeks target to issue blue badges.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry, I thought that was a different question. Yeah, so this is about asking grieving families to return their blue badges after a person is deceased. And I quite agree with you that asking that question very quickly after someone has died is inappropriate. And perhaps we can look at that.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dijk. Moving on, Councillor Brake. Sorry, Councillor Brake. Councillor Hackwell, you stay.
No, I think there are some more questions I have to answer. Yes?
Temporary staff, yes.
Yeah, the next one is about is it correct that there are 19% of staff on temporary contracts?
The question was, there is 19% because it says it in the paper. What is that in absolute numbers?
Okay, if I can ask Sam.
Sam, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. So in real-term numbers, we have 56 locums. 50 of those are covering vacancies where we're struggling to recruit because there's a skills shortage nationally. 3 are covering maternity leave, 2 are covering the sickness period, and 1 is there for additional capacity. We have 10 permanent backfills in the pipeline to backfill for the 50 that we have in the vacancies, and we have 1 agency worker converting to permanent in the coming weeks.
And that's just children and adults, or across all?
That's the breakdown for children's. Did you?
Just children's.
Yeah, sorry, I thought the question was just children's.
Well, there was, but then there's a further question across all departments. So the 57 in children's, which is 100, so it's a 50% reduction in children since last year.
Yep. So bear with me. I can just double check that. So I haven't got the correlation from this time last year, but most definitely from April, where we're tracking for this year, in children's social care, we was on 86, we're now on 58. So there has been a reduction of 28.
And adults and the rest of the organisation?
Adult social care has increased, so they've gone up by 13 since April, and that's largely because of the right sizing that took place across the establishment. So if you recall, in full council, we were given additional budget to put in more resource, and again, very similar to children's, there is a national skill shortage, so we are struggling to recruit to all the vacancies at the pace in which we must do so. And then the other increase is in SEND, so that is up by 29, but that has been brought in as a special project that are paid on assessments to clear the backlog of ECPs that are in place, so paid for assessments rather than with us full time. There's been a reduction in legal by a further 8. So the overall statistics of those areas against locums is in April we was on 207, we're currently on 221, and that's largely because of the backlog that we've brought in and the pressure in adults.
So the amount of locums have actually gone up despite the 5% pay rise last year.
They have gone up, absolutely, can't argue the figures, but we have increased the establishment and we've had to deal with a considerable backlog that has to be done within a statutory period. So we often use locums in this way, and that's why within the workforce strategy we'd never be in a position where our locums wouldn't exist. And as you can see from the children's breakdown, some are covering maternity, some are covering sick leave, and so we would always use locums in that way.
My final question on mid-pay.
Unfortunately, I can't read my own writing at the end of that sentence, but the question was what percentage of people reviewed in Medway received...
Med-pay.
Oh, what proportion of people reviewed in Medpay received...
Pay increase.
A pay increase, okay.
Sam, would you like to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done it in 2 phases. Phase 1 was a pilot, and the people that went into phase 1 were our hardest to recruit areas, and that's where we expected the significant drift in terms of pay to come into play. So there was 64% of phase 1 that received a pay increase. Most of those were due to in-grade movement. So as you recall, the previous scheme, you couldn't move within the band. And now what we've done is we've broken the band into 3 areas to demonstrate the skills and experience that people are bringing to the organisation. So majority of those 64 were based on in-band movement to recognise the skills that they have. Only 7% of those were a grade change, where the job was re-evaluated against the market. And then in phase 2, bearing in mind we've not completed the whole of phase 2, and that's not likely to conclude until May. So far for the teams that have gone through, we've got 37% of our colleagues who have received a change in pay. 13% of those have been through re-evaluation.
Thank you, Sam. Are you content with that, Councillor Hockwell? Thank you. Councillor Brake.
Thank you, Chair. My question is relative to the blue badge system, if I may, please. In as much as...
Councillor Brake, could you speak in the microphone, please?
Sorry, I was trying to be polite and look to the person who I'm addressing the question. So my apologies if it wasn't being picked up correctly. But no, my question is relative to the blue badge system. I'm in touch with a local resident who is now in his late 80s and has applied for a blue badge. And he's got to the stage where, despite several attempts at trying to get the blue badge through the system, keeps coming back wanting more information.
Councillor Brake, sorry, the colleagues can't hear you. Can you get closer to your microphone, please? Thank you.
Right, is that any better? Right. Now this chap has got to the stage where he is so frustrated he doesn't know where to turn to next. And he spoke to me and...
Point of order. Again, why are we doing casework in committee? This is to hold the portfolio holder to not a casework.
This may appear to you to be... Sorry.
Please ask your question, Councillor Brake.
Yeah, well, I don't know, honestly, we've had more interruptions from the other side tonight than I've ever encountered before. Now, in order to put a proper question, in order to put a proper question to the portfolio holder, it is in fact important that I give the example of this casework, because this is across Medway. I'm talking about one person, but I happen to know from past experience there are other examples of this. And rather than just go to the nub, I think it's important that we do understand a little bit about what is happening and how we can improve upon the service. This is what it's about, or certainly my interpretation of what we're trying to do. But anyway, what I'm trying to explain is that we have a gentleman, and I'm sure there are many out there, who are very frustrated at being able to get the blue badge, of which I'm sure, personally, having spoken to him, I believe is possible. My question is, really, with a background like that, is there any way that individuals who are having difficulty in completing the forms, understanding the forms, is there any way that a face-to-face meeting can in fact be arranged where somebody, accompanied by a counsellor if necessary, can actually meet with somebody from the team to go through the paperwork and to make sure, face-to-face, that everything is correct and in good order? That really is the nub of the question. But I think it's important that we do understand that there are people out there in our community who do have difficulty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brake. Councillor Van Dyke, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming, Councillor Brake, that you've assisted this particular individual to resolve their problem regarding their blue badge?
I have and looked at the papers, but even I don't understand where the problem may be. Hence my question, is there any way that a face-to-face arrangement could be made? Not only for this individual, but there may be others that do in fact require this additional help and support.
Thank you. Paul, would you like to come in?
The simple answer is yes. We offer assistance within our cabs. We can go to the community hub. So, yeah, the answer is yes. We offer that over the phone, video or face-to-face. Absolutely.
So therefore, in answer to the question, if I speak to you outside of this meeting, I can arrange with you a date and a time that this can happen. Right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Councillor Harcross-Scott, I had you on the list.
Thank you. Am I allowed to ask another question, Councillor Tijan, to the portfolio holder? I notice that there's been a change in pay and reviewing and performance. How do you think that's going, and how can you make sure that it's effective across departments? Is there any monitoring undertaking there?
Can I ask Sam to answer that question, please?
Sam, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in light of the pay review, we've changed the appraisal process that we have in place. It largely now focuses on in-year progression around the objectives, which are based along standardised job profiles, which haven't been the thing that we've had before. But it also picks up the element of career development and aspirations as well as development. Now, where the band has been broken into 3 layers, it's almost entry point at the starting, kind of really doing a good job in the middle and exceeding at the top. So the skills elements and the development elements within the appraisal form are built around the levels within the job profile now, so much more aligned than they previously were. Previously, we'd also do more or less annual objective setting, where we'd only review it once a year. Through regular one-to-ones, that is constantly spoke about, and those objectives change. So we look at doing them for a 3-month period, a 6-month period, and then more of a longer-term period. So the objectives don't just remain for 1 year. They will cross over rather than start and stop that they've done previously. So in terms of effectiveness of measuring performance, the process is much much more, I suppose, aligned now to the flexibility that we need within everyday delivery. In terms of measuring actual performance, each service manager will have different systems in place because we're such a diverse organisation. So if we take legal, for example, they use ICANN as a system where they track performance, whereas we know with Mosaic, children's will be tracking through Mosaic. So each service manager will be equipped with their own service plan, their own KPIs that those objectives will feed into, and that monitoring then will happen more locally. We trialled the form last year before we launched it. We trialled it across HR, but also within the pilot area, and the feedback was well received. The conversation takes a lot longer, but it's going now to really think about what those skills levels are and what we need to do to grow our capacity within the organisation and give people the opportunity to develop. So we've had good feedback. This is the first full year of running a new process.
Thank you, Sam. We'd like to come back.
Yeah, could I just have a quick follow-up? Will that help us grow really good eggs like Mark Brethwick and Kelly Cogger, people like that will come through management, so we've got, you know, longitudinal service of people?
Yeah, thank you. So to go alongside with the performance development review process that we have in place, we also have in place something called a 9-box diamond. Most people might be familiar with it as being the 9-box grid that's commonly used within civil service and other public sectors. That is a way for us to identify succession and talent and also look at single points of failure or concerns and risks within the workforce, and that ideally will be our succession planning template. So we've got a number of tools. We've piloted this with the corporate management team layer, so we've done it with directors, we've done it with assistant directors, and we've moved to heads of service in terms of looking at that development need as well as then the talent. And the 9-box diamond allows us to look at performance that's being produced as well as the potential within the individual. And that way then we will be looking at a model of growing our own. We know that we've got a lot of areas whereby we've got national skill shortages. Our location doesn't always help, particularly with working at home. We know that you can work in London for a higher salary but spend most of your time at home and not have commuting costs now. So coming out of COVID, it's completely changed for us in terms of dynamics of the market. So the element of our kind of grow our own, we've put a lot more in terms of the front door as well. So looking at internships, we use our apprenticeships fully, and that creates a number of strategies across the workplace. So various areas have their own workforce strategy, children's have theirs, adults are just developing theirs, and it will depend on those services as to what that kind of workforce strategy would look like. But in the majority of places, including planning, and Dave would be able to share if he was here, we have early entry routes in to grow our own, and now the tools in place to help that go through the organisation.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen.
Well, I had a comment about the productivity of staff or otherwise, but it's a bit late for that now, so I won't bother.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I just want to say to Councillor Van Dijk, I'm not going to throw any traps your way. I think it's been quite appalling tonight. I know for a fact that you have had you've had to have some very difficult discussions over this last year. You've had to deal with some really serious issues with staffing, etc., and I think that's underestimated. And you know, I hope, and I do hope that Councillor Atwell, for example, because you know you do know the role and the portfolio. There are difficult decisions you have to make, and it is one of those departments that can really make a difference and a change if you can get it right. And I know you've been doing some great stuff on that locum stuff, etc. And also, I've just got to say it for you, really, is with Councillor Brake with the disabled badge. And I do understand the issues, but let's not forget that in the previous administration, which I was part of that user group, we wanted it all to go away from all the face-to-face and wanted it more digital. So you've inherited some of those good things as well. They're not all bad, but I just wanted to thank you, really, and that is from me as a councillor, but as a person, because I do speak to you. We are a team. And you do work for all of us here on this council, but I just wanted to thank you for those long nights and those difficult times you've had, because I don't want anyone to underestimate that, even if they do feel they just want to fire something at you just to try and embarrass people, and I think that's wrong this evening. Thanks, Zoe.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo Councillor MacDonald's comments. We really appreciate the work that you do, Councillor Van Dijk. My question, although we've been very focused on staff, is actually about leadership. So the Council's focus on leadership through the Medway Manager Programme is pretty impressive, so great work there as well. Just want to ask, how do you see this improving staff engagement and actually our service delivery as a council?
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Van Dijk, would you like to respond?
Well, I think it's a very positive question, and it's good to see opportunities for development for staff. But I would like to ask Sam perhaps to give some more detail on what the plans are going forward.
Thank you. Would you like to comment, Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So as you can see within the paper, we talk about the mandatory training that we've put in place for managers. It's loosely called training because it's more around an introduction into these are the things you need to cover here in Medway as a leader. We've just launched, which cleared EMC last night, which will now be fully launched, a leadership competency framework. And that is to ensure consistency across the leadership arm that we have. And I guess from a HR point, really, we're at the point where we've been rolling out this is what we need to be doing here in Medway. We've started to go into smaller deep dives around topic matters. So, for example, I cover the HR content, and a lot of leaders do need some additional support around sickness. A policy is quite black and white in terms of keeping us safe inside the law, but actually every case is very individual, and making those judgments can sometimes be quite difficult for leaders. So we're doing the deep dives with leaders across that. The strategic leadership, if you like, training that we're putting in place will come into effect this year. So this kind of introductory into leadership has been rolling already. The strategic leadership will come in this year, and that's on the back of that competency framework, which was cleared at EMC. And that will look more into styles around leadership, really embedding our values and what we expect of our leaders in terms of that role modelling. So the programme is ongoing. I do have faith in us getting stronger and better throughout, and we're receiving good feedback from the ones that we've done already because we do evaluate each one.
Thank you, Sam. We'd like to come back, Councillor Hamilton.
So just a supplementary question. So could you expand on the values that you expect our leadership to be exhibiting at all times, please?
Sam, we'd like to come back.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So our values are something that we launched last year across the whole organisation. So just as a reminder, that is collaboration with working together, one Medway, ambitious for Medway, innovation, bold and positive, trusted, we will do what we say, be open and accountable, respectful, valuing Medway's diversity, heritage and each other, caring, compassionate towards our community and colleagues, and proud to be Medway, taking pride in what we do. So all of the training and the elements of behaviour that we expect leaders to be able to role model those. We've done a campaign around our values to really bring them to life. So we've done a Let's Talk campaign, which gave leaders some material to go out to teams, to talk to teams about how they can bring these values to life. So it's not just something we're ticking a box in. The performance form that I mentioned to Councillor Holmcroft-Scott around how we're measuring performance also has an element of the values in there. So whilst people are talking about what they've been up to within the year in terms of demonstrating their performance, they can also talk about the values that they're putting in place, and it's a leader's role really to bring those to light. The campaign continues. We've got some videos that we've done from leaders where they've shared why the values matter to them, and we will keep that campaign going to make sure that this is something that everybody's living and breathing rather than being in the drawer.
Thank you, Sam. We content with that, Councillor? Councillor Jones, and then we'll go Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. A couple of questions I had. First of all, on reducing agency staff dependence, and I'm quite happy, Councillor Van Dijk, if you wanted to pass this to the officer to answer. But I was going to follow on from Councillor Hatwell and say I was very pleased to see the agency staff rate drop to 19% in just a few months. And I wondered if you had a feel for how Medpay, beg your pardon, how Medpay and other HR initiatives will continue to bring in more permanent staff. Is it all right now, Chair, to ask the second question as well? second question was going to be on the complaints system, and specifically refers to paras 615 to 617 of Councillor Van Dijk's very helpful report. I was pleased to see the complaints staff were working very hard at exceeding the Council's 10-day response target, and pleased to see that the stage 1 complaints were being resolved, quite a high percentage of them at stage 1, or resolved to a point where the complainant was reasonably satisfied. What I wondered about was whether there was any feel on stage 2 complaints as to customer satisfaction. I note that the stage 2 performance is also exceeding the targets for responding, but these are necessarily more complex cases. So anecdotally, one always has the worry that if they're being responded to very quickly, are they just rubber stamping the stage 1 decision? So do we have a feel as to how customers are how much customers are satisfied with the stage 2 complaints process and the resolutions reached through that? And again, I'm quite happy if that is passed to the officer to answer, or if those figures can be provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Van Dijk, would you like to respond?
I would like to pass that to the officers, and I think that will be in the first instance to Sam and then Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the Medpay review and the structures that we've got in place and competitive salaries, whether that makes a difference with our locum staff coming in, we have evidence, particularly in legal, and I think this was shared last year because legal was in the pilot phase, who went through whereby we regraded the roles, put the correct salaries in place, and most definitely made a reduction in the locums for us to attract and retain permanent staff. I don't have the figure with me tonight, but we have done a lot of conversions from locums into permanent. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't have a competitive offer on the table, so that's absolutely a bonus for us. Children's are slightly different. Because of Ofsted, originally, we moved quite quickly with children's to put a career pathway in place. So whilst children's social workers and occupational therapists are not aligned to Medpay just yet and will go in the next phase, they have had the elements of the career progressional points within their pay already, and that has most definitely gone some way to ensuring that permanency across the workforce. So we do measure this. We know, I haven't again got the figure at hand, but we do know from the pilot phase of the Medpay review, even our turnover has reduced as a result, and we know from our exit interviews, staff predominantly leave because it's either pay or career progression. And we know from the staff survey, a lot of our staff will recommend Medway as a place to work. So the two things we've been focusing on is the Medpay review, as well as making sure that our roles are competitive so that we can stabilise the workforce. All of that data together, I do believe, does signify a swift change in the fact that we are managing to retain our staff as well as recruit permanent staff and reduce the locums.
Are you content with that, Councillor Jones?
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, would you like to come in as well?
Thank you. Yes, you're absolutely right. The stage 2 complaints do tend to be more complex, and it involves a lot more to and fro in between the complaints team and the services. But I'm pleased to report currently we are actually reviewing the whole service in light of new Ombudsman guidance. So there is some automation being built into the JARDU process that sits behind. So even though the performance is good at the moment, we expect it to be even better because we'll be taking out making the process more efficient.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps the committee could return to the subject at some point when that review has been done. You know, might even have a paper on the subject. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to return to the blue badges just for a second. And officers and the portfolio holder might be interested in this. Last night we discussed blue badges at audit because we had an internal audit on blue badges. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I wasn't sitting on that one. It just feels like I've been here forever. Sorry. Anyway, on Tuesday we had audit, and our head of internal audit and came to the with the report. And one of the areas which was audited internally was blue badges. And the audit found that there is a well-managed service and it isn't in jeopardy of people fraudulently using badges. So I would just like to make sure that all of the checks and balances, which, as I understand it, cross-party developed originally, and I think Councillor Hackwell was actually involved in that, continue. And Councillor Van Dyke, I would suggest that when we return to the question about blue badges, it's the whole thing. It's about people being able to use them that are entitled to use them. Paul has quite clearly indicated that our hubs are crucial places where people can get face-to-face if they run into difficulty, or even if they can't fill the forms in. So I think this knowledge is needed to be brought back. So when we look at blue badges, we don't just look at the giving out of them, but the use of them and the support for people when they need to give them up. So it is a suggestion more than anything else, but I would commend officers and your good self about the process that has proved that they are being used correctly by the majority of people. The amount of fraudulent use has been very small, and that is audited. So we need to just take things in the whole round. It's the same as leadership, good management, and the retention of staff isn't just about money, although that is the key driver for most people taking a job. It is not always the reason to stay in it. So if we become an employer of choice, we need to acknowledge all our systems. And I would just commend that to you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Van Dyke.
I agree with your proposal, Councillor Brown, and we can look at that.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. With this local government reorganisation, it's obviously causing a lot of angst and concern amongst public sector workers, of which I am myself. I'm also a member of a union. Has that affected recruitment at all? Because obviously people might be looking at vacancies, but then think to themselves, well, this organisation I'm applying for might not exist in the next year or so. So has this local government reorganisation affected recruitment at all? Thank you.
Councillor Van Dyke, would you like to respond?
Well, I'd ask Sam to respond if there's any sort of indication that people are concerned at the moment, because we don't know what local government reorganisation looks like yet. So, but if people are concerned about that, perhaps Sam can answer that.
Sam.
Thank you, Chair. So we haven't felt the impact yet. If I just give you some stats from our last quarter-3 recruitment in terms of what we've been up to. So we've had 143 roles out to advert, and we've recruited 122 permanent contracts. So we've got high churn, and we do have recruitment coming through, which is really pleasing to see. We are, if you like, upping our efforts around our attraction. So we've got some additional accounts in LinkedIn where we are, rather than just what I would deem posting and praying, we're going out to push our brand in terms of as an organisation a bit further. We're giving certainty around the jobs that we have. We're selling all the good stuff we're doing around our people promise at the moment, and a number of things got passed at EMC last night that builds on that people promise around our benefits. And we're just making sure that we're ramping up our efforts to make sure our presence is known within the market. We're also doing that internally as well with our own staff and giving assurance with our own staff. So the leader and the chief executive done an all-staff call last week to give assurances around what we know today. And we have a whole campaign that will both go internally and externally around us keeping people in the knowledge of what we know. And as Councillor Van Dyke says, we don't know that much at the moment. So it's kind of giving that commitment, assurance, and making sure that we're competitive along with others. But at the moment, the impact in terms of us not being able to fill our campaigns has not been felt just yet.
Thank you, Sam. Are you content, Councillor Pearce? I don't have any other member. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move recommendation 1.1 at page 15. The committee is asked to note the report. Further, a briefing paper is to be prepared on cabs, call volumes, and a holistic blue badge briefing paper to be produced.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor MacDonald. Is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Van Dijk. That brings us on to agenda item 6, the draft capital and revenue budget on page 27 to page 66. I will ask the Chief Finance Officer, Katie Durkin, to introduce the report. Katie.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So we presented the draft budget to this committee back in November, and you referred it on to the other overview and scrutiny committees, and their comments back to you are provided at Appendix 1. So tonight, members are asked to comment on the proposals in the draft budget as they pertain to the services in the remit of this committee, and you're also asked to consider and agree which of the comments that should be forwarded to the Cabinet for consideration in the budget that they recommend on to Council. And just for members' information, since the last meeting, shortly before Christmas, the government published the provisional local government finance settlement, and we reported that to the Cabinet in just earlier this month. And the provisional settlement indicates that we'll receive almost £11 million more funding than we projected in the draft budget. We're expecting the final settlement imminently, and we'll incorporate the updated allocations into the budgets that we present for Cabinet and Council in February. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Katie, for this report. I don't think we need to spend too long on this because, as you say, it's November's budget and there'll be another one published next week. So, and that will go to Cabinet and may get republished even after Cabinet before we get to see it at the end of February. So it's a really changing model at the moment. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at November's business ONS, so if some of this was dealt with, I apologise, but just some questions I might have. I'm still a bit confused about council tax income. We had a debate last night and you corrected me and said it was 8 million that we were going to get. In this budget it's 12 million, and now I understand some of that is 3.1 million of that was because we've got some surplus that we can put it, but we also have got to put £1 million back to cover the debt provision. So I don't quite know where 8 plus 3 minus 1 equals 12, so perhaps you could enlighten me a bit. So that was one on in the budget. I also think the paper's wrong, and I hope the paper's right, because it says that the council tax for Band D property is £1,754. Well, it's actually £2,100. So if you'd like to change my council tax bill back to the 2021 numbers, I'd really appreciate it. Yeah. I think if you just look at interest rate and financing, if I understood the paper correctly, in the MTFO, we were predicting a £4 million increase in financing costs. We're now saying it's a slight decrease because of the events that have happened. So if that's, I just like assurance that I read it correctly. Question on Medway North, is the 433k realistic of getting an additional 433k, bearing in mind that, as you also mentioned in the paper, that they're probably going to feel the brunt of the national living wage and the national insurance. So I can't see how they're going to increase by 433 on top of last year's income. So just like some clarification on that. Children and adults, the 8.3 million fit plan that you're rolling over will happen. That should have happened this year and it didn't. How confident are you that it will happen next year? Because it's already late. Public health, should we really be reviewing public health so they work within their financial means rather than requiring an extra 1.3 million over their ring-fenced amount? I'm sure they could do a great many more things with more money, but but should they be working with inside their box? And I was a little bit surprised that the housing figure for temporary housing is not going to be as great as it is, since last January we approved 42 million capital increase for housing. So perhaps if you could just enlighten of where we've got spending that 42 million and how many houses we've got to and why that budget number's gone up this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hackwell. Kitty, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll do my best. I won't bore you with the council tax calculation, mostly because if you'll humour me and wait a couple of weeks for the council publication, there's a document that we statutorily have to publish which walks you through those steps. And so effectively, the assumption in the budget says we've got a tax base of about 92,000 homes, and we make a projection in the budget as to how many more homes we think will be delivered in Medway, and then we take the current Band D and we multiply that by what the uplift of just under 5% looks like, and then we look at how our actual collection fund is doing compared to the projections that we made more than a year ago. That's where you get the surplus or deficit from. And then we look at what we need to put in for debt. And the cumulative impact of all of that is the increase that we've reflected in this budget. I think when I was talking last night, I was just sort of throwing around about what a 5% would look like, right? So I was probably being a bit glib with my accounting there, so my apologies. But yeah, the council tax resolution is one of the documents the many documents that's published alongside the council version of the budget papers, so that's all set out in there. That Band D that we talk about in this report is the element that's for Medway Council services only. So unfortunately for you, the Band D that you actually pay also reflects Kent Fire and Rescue, the Kent Police Precept, and if you're in an area that's got a parish council, whatever parish precept they levy as well. Interest and fine. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, please use the microphone.
I said it actually matches 2022's number almost exactly. That's a bit strange.
I hadn't noticed that, so I'll check.
Sorry. It mentions in the paper that Band D is 1,754, and that's exactly what it was in 2021, I think.
I think what it's saying is
Yeah, but that must have been preceptors then, must it?
It's either a coincidence or what the report is saying is that the last year's Band D was this, and therefore once we multiply that by the uplift, that's how we arrive at the current year Band D, but I will double check. We will do, thank you. Before we publish it for Cabinet, we will check that figure, thank you. If I move on to interest and financing then, so when we put together the MTFO, we make a load of assumptions, obviously, about what we think might happen to interest rates, but also what we think might happen to our borrowing requirements, so what we're projecting will happen in the current capital programme. And we also put in an allowance for what we think might happen in terms of growth to that capital programme. Obviously, as we march closer to the financial year, we know a little bit more about what our borrowing profile actually looks like, and we know a little bit more about what the capital programme projections are, because we've got another couple of rounds of forecasts for that, and at this stage we know what else the council is aspiring to add to that capital programme. And so the cumulative impact of all of that means that not only do we not now project that we need to put that additional 4 million in, but we actually think we can reduce that slightly. So that's good news, I think. Medway North, the figure that you've picked out there is the rebate element, and that remains the same in the projections for 25/6 as it is in 24/5. The pressure that you rightly talked about national insurance increases and cost of living, national living wage, I'm sorry, is actually reflects in frontline services, culture and community, regeneration, and possibly a little bit in send transport as well. So that pressure is elsewhere in the budget. It's still in there. But so how confident am I that that rebate will be delivered? Well, as I understand it, the budget that we're moving forward with includes that figure, and I've no reason to believe that we won't receive it. So that's what I know right now. In terms of C&A, so you picked up the £8.3 million savings target in the FIT plan in adults. I think what I would say about what we put into adults in terms of a transformation plan when we set the 24/5 budget was that it was really ambitious, and it reflected a lot of additional investment in adult social care, and we called that right sizing. And I think that stuff, in retrospect, takes a lot longer to land than perhaps we modelled into the financial projections. So obviously you can agree as a council that we need to invest in additional resources in adult social care, but you can't snap your hands and have those people on site and working in the way that you want immediately. And so that stuff has taken a bit of time. I'm assured by the services that it's reasonable for us to model the delivery of all of that stuff into our projections next year. And as I understand it, that's what we're reporting in the FIT plan as well. So, and just a little shout out for the service who received the CQC inspection, which was pretty positive. So clearly that investment is actually helping us to deliver better services there. Public health, should we be reviewing whether they can live within their means? I mean, sitting here with my hard hat accountant hat on, I would say I would love everybody to be able to live within the budget requirement for us to not be in this situation. But I think a large proportion of what public health does is wrapped up in contracts with providers, and those providers are very people-heavy services. So much like our colleagues at Medway North or our colleagues who deliver social care services, they are really impacted by particularly national living wage increases and will be impacted by the national insurance contributions changes. But the other thing about public health is at this stage, the government hasn't made any announcements about public health grants. So the gap that we're projecting here reflects the impact if the public health grant only goes up by 1%. And I think in retrospect, that's probably a bit unlikely because that's below any measure of inflation over the last year or so. So we're hopeful that the public health grant would increase and would therefore remove most, if not all, of that pressure. So with a bit of luck, that might even come out in the final settlement imminently. And then I think your last question was around the temporary accommodation cost and perhaps why that figure's not coming down as fast as we would like. And I suppose maybe similarly to my answer about adult social care, we can decide as an authority that the right thing to do is invest in direct delivery or building or buying temporary accommodation. But again, that takes some time to deliver. I confess that I don't have at my fingertips the kind of numbers in terms of where we are in that programme. And I think it's a subject that's covered in the housing revenue account budget proposals, or certainly will be in the budget papers. But I'm happy to put them or work with housing colleagues to provide some figures to members of this committee outside of the meeting. I just, you know, what I know about the current year monitoring is that as it's stated in the FIT plan and in the budget monitoring, we are projecting an improving position. I just don't think that we're going to land where we'd hope to when we set the budget. But I suppose, you know, a budget is a set of plans, isn't it? And things move on. But hopefully that's helped some of those. Thanks.
Thank you, Katie. Are you content with that, Councillor Hopwell? Councillor Pearce.
Just in time, Chairman, thanks. Are we still going ahead with the new council chamber? The reason why is because with local government reorganisation in mind, this could be a waste of money, potentially, because we don't know where the council chamber will be for this new super unitary authority which they're coming up with. And they may decide that they don't want this council chamber at Gunwharf. It could be anywhere. We don't know. And also, can we have some new mics for meetings, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Phil, would you like to respond?
Yeah. So, the council chamber, the plan was agreed that we would move the council chamber into Gunwharf as part of the overall Gunwharf works. As it stands, no decision has been made to stop those works. We still need to repair the rack issues anyway. But at some point, the administration may decide to reconsider that. But at the moment, no decision's been made not to move the chamber into Gunwharf.
Thank you, Phil. Are you content with that, Councillor Pearce? Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be brief. I just wanted to comment on the additional funding which the officer referred to in introductory remarks she made. I would particularly focus on para 13.6 of the report, additional funding for homelessness, and para 13.9 on potholes. And just to say, I myself have no difficulty in forwarding the comments of the other scrutiny committees to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Katie, would you like to respond?
No, I think we still await one of those allocations at least, but hopefully within the final settlement, and we'll update members through the final budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have another member, but just a quick one from me, Katie and Phil. How will this budget impact local services in the broad scheme of things? And also the Medway 2.0, the way it's been shown in the budget with regards to the removal of the roadmap and saving the 2 million savings. How are we going to look at that and monitor it in terms of what is success? What are the markers, and where are we on that journey, that journey with regards to Medway 2.0? Perhaps Paul could give me some insight as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll attempt to answer your first one, although Phil or other colleagues might want to jump in, and then I think I'm going to hand over to Phil on the second question about Medway 2.0, if that's okay. So in terms of how this budget will impact local services, I think it's quite clear that it's a budget that's aiming to sustain investment in the statutory services. So there's still additional investment going into children's social care, adult social care, education. There's some significant boosts to education funding, particularly for schools, coming via dedicated schools grants. And it protects services across people and place, while still investing further in things like other areas of the back office that have yet to have further investment. And obviously the plan behind that is to enable the council to continue to deliver and improve the quality of the services that matter to people in Medway. And I think that that's being borne out by some of the inspection results that have happened over the last couple of years. So obviously we've had improvements across children's services, we've had positive adult social care inspection, a really positive inspection in housing services, so I think this budget is attempting to sustain that stuff in the face of some very difficult financial choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, please.
Okay, so in terms of you're talking about the removal of the explicit Medway 2.0 target from the budget. So where that target came from, when we started the business change programme, was probably a couple of years ago now, we put in the budget investment, £1 million a year for 3 years to deliver savings through transformation, predominantly the Medway 2.0 programme. But at that point, we hadn't done the discovery work and we didn't know where those savings were going to fall. So they sat as a corporate savings target and it was profiled over 3 years. So there was 2 million in the first year, 2.5 and 2.5 broadly in the 2 subsequent years. Obviously, as the years progressed and more detailed work's been done to assess where those savings are going to fall, and bearing in mind the business change resource isn't just looking at the digital transformation, it's supporting the organisation to do all of its transformational projects. It supports all of the 13 or 14 million pounds worth of savings that are now underpinning the budget for next year. So because we know where they are falling now and those savings are reflected in the directorates, we took out the corporate target, 2.5 million, and replaced it with the 13 million pound of services that the business change team is supporting. So that's what it's about, really. It's not that we're saying we're not going to make those savings. It's just we know where they are now, and they're inbuilt into that 13 million pound of savings that are already in the budget for next year. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And where are we on that transformation journey?
I think I'd hand
Paul, sorry.
So a couple of weeks ago we presented the Medway 2.0 delivery plan to CMT, and we've picked out some of the key areas. This committee saw that first draft of the list for some pre-decision scrutiny that went forward, so the work streams are now pulling together. Obviously technology is playing a key role, artificial intelligence, automation, but we've been really clear, and this has been probably the most successful bit, is that that comes at the very end of the process. So we're designing the services first in collaboration with all the various services across the council, and then applying the technology that will make their processes better. Because what we found in the past is services, oh, we have to do it that way because the system works that way. It's like, no, how do you want to do it? What's the most efficient way for you? What's most effective for the residents? And now we're building the systems to fit what the services and residents need.
Thank you, Paul. So, I mean, is that out on testing now? There were going to be a member user group. There were going to be residents who were going to be piloting. Where are we with that?
Yeah, I checked with Democratic Services where we are. I think the terms of reference have gone out. Parties have been emailed to make the nominations, and we're chomping at the bit to go. So that's ready to go now.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Hupker, you wanted to interject?
I need to say that user group has been set up and the people have been nominated, and you're one of them.
Thank you, I know. I've seen that a couple of weeks ago. Thank you. One more thing from me. I haven't got another member before we go to you, Vice Chair. Is in terms of devolution is coming. How resource are we? How robust is this budget to deal with what's coming our way?
Okay, so in terms of devolution, I mean, if you're talking specifically about devolution, devolution's about the devolution of powers from government to a new body that doesn't yet exist, and there will be funding coming down to deal with that. Now, obviously, in the interim, there is work that's being undertaken by officers, and we are conscious that Medway Council doesn't have the resources that KCC has in terms of policy units and that sort of thing. In the report that was agreed by Council, delegation was given to the Chief Executive and the Leader to bring in some resource to support the devolution and then beyond that, the LGR effort. I've been talking to Adam, who's leading this work, Adam Bryan, about the resource that we need. There's £450,000 included in next year's budget to fund that resource. So just some kind of policy resource and partnership working resource to support us through that devolution journey. Now, there will be work that falls to our comms folk as well, to HR in the fullness of time, and we'll consider that at the appropriate time. But for now, just to get people thinking about what the organisation needs to do, we're getting some resource in fairly quickly.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Brigg, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, if I may, please, Chairman. The devolution subject has been raised by yourself this evening, but I'm not sure if members around here this evening have seen a paper that was put together at a central area, and it was councillors' views on devolution white paper that has been going through. And I know that we discussed this at the full council meeting last week, but there were some interesting facts came out of the views by councillors. And in fact, there was something like 834 sample size taken across the country. And interestingly enough, the results, I'd be interested to know, Chairman, if I can ask, has anybody seen this paper? Has anybody seen the response? Well, I'd be more than happy to share that with not only yourself, Chair, but others sat around here at the table, because it gave some interesting facts and information with regard what people out there thought relative to the proposal for devolution. And it is at the moment a proposal. And I know at full council meeting last week, somebody suggested, what about public consultation, and that was sort of, we were told, how expensive public consultation is. But I think really the point is, Chair, that it appears that we seem to be going down the route of devolution and committing an awful lot of finance from our own council and working with other people on something that looks as though it's going to happen. But I haven't seen anywhere in these papers where it talks about consultation with our own people within our community. And I'm wondering whether this is something that should be...
Point of order. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you.
Chair, although I respect what Councillor Brake is saying about devolution, we're on the budget item, but also just to be clear, the opposition leader and our leader have agreed the next process, and that is to put that letter through and move ahead. So I think this isn't an agenda item for this evening, I think, about devolution.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Brake, were you asking a finance question?
Yeah, it is. Well, in fact, this is all about the finance, and our finance chief operations operating officer has in fact made clear that there's a lot of resource being put into preparing a whole load of documentation and working exercises that need to be put together to understand what devolution is about. But the point I'm really making is that to do all of this is a very expensive operation, and I'm really at the stage where I'm thinking, given how this paper that I've seen is being shared around councillors, is there in fact an opportunity that, as part of what's going on, should there in fact be public, what's the word now? Public consultation?
I think you'll find from the process, through your chair, this is a budget item. Is there a question about the budget? There's a comment, and I agree with Councillor Brake, there's a comment. I think Phil can answer it. There's a comment about a lot of money being put aside for this, and that's a confirmation. The point is, why are we still discussing a point that's already in the budget?
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Brake, do you
I'll
have
wait.
a question on the budget?
I'll wait for that response.
Thank you, Councillor Brake. Phil, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so as I said, we put £450,000 in the budget to fund a policy unit. Now, what I suppose I didn't say is that what it does is recognise that we haven't got a policy resource. So KCC's policy unit is mobilised on this at the moment. We've got senior officers from our CMT that are sitting around the table trying to have this discussion. So it just shone a light on the fact that we haven't got a policy unit in this authority. Now, that's meant that we've made the decision to put that in the budget as a permanent resource. Now, the first job that it's going to deal with is devolution and LGR, but it is going to have a wider remit than that. So it's not being put in purely to deal with devolution. That's the kind of catalyst that made us think, actually, there's a weakness in our structure. But once we get to a stage where the government has made a decision whether we're in the priority programme or not, there will be money coming down from above to facilitate this. So it's not something that the councils, any of the councils, are going to have to fund the huge amount of work that will be involved in first of all, setting up a new strategic authority, and then eventually the local government reorganisation of the local authorities.
Thank you for that. Are you content with that, Councillor Brake?
At this stage, yes, thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any other member. Yes, Vice Chair. Yeah.
Okay, I move the recommendations at page 27. The committee is asked to comment on the proposals outlined in the draft capital and revenue budgets insofar as they relate to the services within the remit of this committee, to consider the comments from individual overview and scrutiny committees as set out in Appendix 1, and to determine that all comments from the Overview and Scrutiny Committees are forwarded to Cabinet and contribute to the overall comments that the Business Support and Digital Overview and Scrutiny Committee will feed back to Cabinet.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is that seconded? Councillor Jones. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And that brings us on to agenda item 7. It's the Risk Strategy Annual Report. And I ask our Chief Organisation Culture Officer, Sam Beck-Farley, to introduce the report. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. As you will be aware, we review the risk strategy annually. We've done a big refresh about 2 years ago, which is now working well and embedded within the organisation. So this review has no significant changes to reports. There are some minor changes that have the details listed in paragraph 5 of the report, and the track changes for ease are in Appendix 1. Audit Committee reviewed this on Monday, and other than some clarification, there are no further recommendations for changes. Comments from tonight's committee will move forward into the Cabinet report on the 11th of February. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Any member? Thank you. I have no member, so Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move recommendation 1.1 at page 67. The committee is asked to consider the 2025-26 risk strategy as set out in Appendix 1 to the report and submit any comments to Cabinet.
Is that seconded? Councillor McDonald. Is that agreed? Great. That brings us on to agenda item 8. It's the One Medway Council Plan 2024 to 2028 Key Performance Indicator Refresh 2025-2026. I ask our Chief Organisation Culture Officer, Sam Beck-Farley, to introduce the report. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. This report represents the 25-26 Key Performance Indicator refresh for the One Medway Council Plan. It's been a light touch refresh. We don't change our priorities, but we do look at the performance indicators. So we have 93 key performance indicators that remain unchanged, 9 performance indicators that have been amended slightly, and you'll find the notes of those within the appendix and details as to why that is, and 3 performance indicators have been removed because the data is no longer available. We have 3 performance indicators that are awaiting data before the targets can be agreed, and we intend to ask for delegated authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of the Council in order to put those in place after full Council has agreed the amendments as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Any member? Councillor Hockwell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to say that when reading this, I found it quite difficult to follow, especially when targets hadn't been met and there was no notes to say what went wrong or what they're going to do to put it right. So if we get presented this in the future, you know, I just pick on one, for example, which is 1.06, where you have targets of Q1 54, 55, 56, 57 Q4 last year, and the only performance figure we get is 48% in Q3. And there's no notes, nothing to say what they're doing to rectify that, how they're moving forward, and they just left everything the same. So if we're going to be presented with a file like this, could we just make it a little bit more easier to follow and make sure that if targets haven't been met, you know, like rag rate it or something, I don't know, so we understand what's going on. That's it, just a comment, really.
Thank you, Councillor Hockwell. Sam, would you like to respond?
If I may, Chair, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Hackwell. Yeah, we want to make it easy to interpret. Appreciate there's a lot of data there and a lot to go through. We do have the, I guess, the mitigation and the proactive elements of what we're going to do to make sure targets come in. And that is contained within the Q3 data report that we have. So rather than make this report too long, I'll take it away and have a look at it. But perhaps even if we linked it to that, you'd have a point of reference. And that might help. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Are you content, Councillor Hockwell? Any other member? Over to you, Vice Chair.
I move the recommendations at page 103. 1.1, the committee is asked to consider the proposed changes to the key performance indicators that will be used to track performance of the One Medway Council Plan in 2025-26 as set out in Appendix 1 and Section 4.7 and submit any comments to Cabinet. 1.2, the committee is asked to note that Council will be requested to delegate authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader of the Council to agree new key performance indicators and interim targets where applicable as set out in paragraph 4.8 of the report.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is that seconded? Councillor MacDonald, is that agreed? Great, and that brings us now to agenda item 10, the work program. I will ask our Democratic Services Officer, Steve Dickens, to introduce the report. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. So 3 items I'd just like to draw members' attention to. The procurement strategy update was due to come to this meeting. That wasn't possible, so it will come to the March meeting. The second item is also coming to March, the taxi tariff review that will be considered by Licensing and Safety next month, but that's for pre-decision scrutiny. And then one final item, we have had a request for a members' item from the chairperson, which was regarding the sick pay and the welfare of employees, and that will come to the March meeting as well. Thank you.
Any member? Councillor Hamilton.
Perhaps, can I have a little bit more information on the agenda item that the members' item that you're proposing, please?
Thank you, Chair. The member item is to look at the 39% increase in sick pay or sick or time off, and just to assess how we are looking after the welfare of our people.
Can I suggest that that's perhaps an Employment Matters Committee issue?
No, that falls on HR, and HR falls under business support overview and scrutiny.
But I just want to point out that the current the review of the sickness policy was not on the agenda item last night. So perhaps in terms of scheduling, you may want to consider when that comes to this committee.
Sorry,
can I come in on that?
I've got a couple of members before you, and I'll come to you, Councillor Printer. Okay, I've got Councillor Pearce and.
Thank you, Chairman. What I was going to ask is a different subject. If I skip and then come back round.
Okay. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, mine was on a different subject. If you wanted to take Councillor Prenter first, I was only going to ask if we could have something on the complaints system. Because Mr. Boyd has advised there's a review, so if he can advise the clerk of the appropriate timing for that, could that be in the work programme? Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Printer.
Yeah, thank you. Last night it was on the agenda for EMC, but it wasn't adopted correctly what Councillor Hamilton was saying, and it's actually gone out to trade unions for a 30-day consultation. So I think I would suggest it would be better for you to bring your members' items. You can bring whatever members' items you want, and it does sit with this committee. But that would be better after the adoption of the new sickness policy. Otherwise, it's a bit pointless. I don't know what you want to find out, achieve, but your questions might be answered by the new policy. So I would suggest you yourself delay in your members' item until the new sickness policy is in place.
Thank you. Thank you for your suggestion. I mean, this is for the committee to decide. Okay, it's a members' item, and I brought it to the committee, and the committee for the committee to decide. The reason I brought this forward is to look at what we are currently doing for our employees, and it was in response to my question at full council. Hence, this member item was developed from there. I don't think there's any reason why I shouldn't bring the members' item to the next meeting, because it will be looked at elsewhere. This falls under this committee's remit, and the committee can, but I will take advice from officers.
Yes, just to say, as a member's item, it can go to the March committee. It can, or if there's a scheduling change or there is a policy, then obviously I've just become aware of that. I wasn't aware of that. The member can decide whether they want it in March or at a later date, and we can consider that, and perhaps we'll discuss it, and then we will decide at that point. But it is a member's item, so it's them if they wish to bring it.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Printer.
Can I ask if she can come in and maybe give us some advice whether that would be appropriate, and if there is potentially be able to do a briefing note that would give the committee to make it worthwhile bringing it at that point?
Thank you. Sam, would you like to come in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. So I can produce a briefing note around our welfare in terms of our staff and what we have in terms of a provision to support staff. The bit that we haven't passed through committee yet is our new policy. So I won't go into policy detail within the briefing note because that is likely to change. And Councillor Prenter's point was, would it be better to do that all together, because that will give you much more of a holistic view around the welfare support. So we can do it in two parts, or we could do it further on if you want to defer as a committee this evening. But that aside, if you want it on March, I can do a briefing note around the welfare support we've got in, noting that the policy is changing.
Councillor MacDonald.
Sorry, Chair. Members' items, of course, everyone's entitled to bring a members' item. So let's get that out there first of all. However, it's sort of back to front, this. And I'm concerned, and I will say, Sam's told us many times about, you have, Sam, about some of the good stuff we do, because I'm the one that's questioned a lot on that, about the good stuff we do for our staff when they're struggling, including those that are working from home, those that went through COVID, those that are in isolation, mental health, etc. We have all those hubs, and we have all those, and sorry, Sam, if I said the word wrong, but we have all those things. You have an employment committee that looks at all of this as well, with the trade union reps and with the staff, Sam and others. I'm a little bit worried, Steve. I think it has to go back to Wayne as well, because I'm a bit concerned. Obviously, I'm not concerned at you because you can't keep abreast of all committees, I know. But if there is a policy coming through and it's not in place yet, it could cause problems here. So we could have a members' item. We'll tell you what's happened. So you'll get an answer from Sam telling you what's happening, but then the policy could change, or that consultation could change, and it could all be different, or it could be enhanced, or I'm sure it's going to be enhanced, hopefully. It's going to be enhanced, but we're not going to do it twice. So I'm just a bit worried whether there's anything legally here that we could be treading on. Not for now, Steve, but you need to find out. But I'm not taking away the members' bit, obviously, Chair, but I am concerned that you're doing something that that's in progress, and we'll be coming back here anyway and telling you, like it has every single year, what good stuff we do when we get the survey, when we get everything else, what good stuff we do for our staff. I understand, following full council, you want to make a point. I understand that, but I think you'll get more information once that policy's gone through its consultation periods than you will coming in March, probably.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. It's not making a point after full council. Thank you. We're looking at 39% year-on-year increase, and that's why I wanted to bring this item forward, not to make a point.
Chair, you said following your question at full council. That's
Yes.
what you said. You
Yes.
said following your question at full council, you wanted to bring it
The
here.
response I received at full council led to this item.
So, Chair, hence me saying to you, from full council, because you said from your question at full council and the response you received. All I'm saying is, I don't mind you coming and getting your briefing papers and us discussing it for an hour. It's not an issue. I just would ask Steve to check with Wayne and check with our legal team that when stuff is out for consultation, it's okay doing that. It's protecting you as well as the committee. I don't want to go where we're back again in June because you've got a new answer. It's just about making sure it's right, Steve.
Thank you. Steve, would you like to respond?
I'm happy to go back to colleagues and we'll discuss whether the idea of a policy being out for consultation would necessarily stop a member's item or delay it. I think it's more but I think it is more whether the timing would be more useful to have it at a later date or not. But I do think it's something that can be discussed outside of the meeting, and then obviously we will have time for the March meeting to do whatever we wish in terms of, or you wish in terms of the members' item.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Harkwell.
Just very quickly, I'm looking forward to the March meeting, especially the item on the reduction of non-permanent staff.
Councillor Hockerscott.
Yeah, I think you missed me, but that's fine. I just wondered, to save committees time, and when we ask the officer, Samantha, we simplify the necessary and eliminate the unnecessary, and, discuss two separate items or one, of it together. It just makes common sense to do it that way. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Hockerscott. I believe that what we have agreed is for our democratic officer to take this away from the meeting, and then we will come back with that. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson, for letting me come back in. I've just noticed that on the work programme, the local plan is missing, and I understand that the local plan may be going to, I think it's June, or the June meeting. And also the leader of the council, I believe, did say that all scrutiny committees will have a chance to scrutinise that plan. So I'm just asking if that could be added to the work programme, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Steve, would you like to respond?
The local plan obviously has been to the committee before, and it's going through the process. The local plan process is not something I know in great detail, to be honest, so I would need to speak to the Chief Planning Officer in terms of that plan, but it isn't on our work programme at the moment. But happy to take that away and discuss with the Chief Planning Officer.
Thank you, Steve. Would you like to come back in, Councillor Pearce?
Yeah, just quickly, I've just been told by a colleague that it's probably been delayed to November. Do we know if that's correct?
Steve?
It's not something I'm aware of, to be perfectly honest. So I will need to take that away, and I'll give you an answer tomorrow via your email.
Thank you. So we've got a couple of takeaways from the work programme. Now, I've got no other member. Vice Chair.
I move the recommendations at page 95. 1.1, the committee is asked to agree the provisional work programme at Appendix 1 to the report. 1.2, the committee is asked to note the work programmes of the other overview and scrutiny committees at Appendix 2 to the report.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Chair, with the provision of the report back on complaints procedure. Thanks.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Thank you, and that brings us to the end of our meeting. Thank you for those watching. Thank you.
Pembroke.